Hi everyone. Welcome back. If you are here tonight, then perhaps you are looking for a quiet place to rest your mind. And you have found one. This is a gentle space, a slow and peaceful place, where we are going to explore something soft and fascinating together. Tonight, we are going to talk about ants. Now, you might be thinking, ants? Those tiny creatures we see on the sidewalk, or moving in long, quiet lines across the ground? Yes, those ones. And the more we look at them, slowly, gently, the more we begin to realize that ants are carrying some of the most quietly remarkable stories in all of the natural world. Ants have been on this earth for an extraordinarily long time. They have lived through ice ages and heat waves, through floods and droughts, through the slow shifting of continents. And through all of it, they have simply kept going. Quietly, steadily, without rush, without panic. There is something deeply calming about that. And so tonight, we are going to follow them. Not quickly, not urgently. We are going to drift through their world the way a leaf drifts down a slow river. Unhurried, peaceful, curious. Each fact we explore will be soft and interesting and easy to hold in your mind. So if you would like, you can close your eyes, or let your gaze go soft. Let your breathing slow a little. And let's begin, very gently together. The very first thing to know about ants is just how ancient they are. Ants first appeared on this planet somewhere around 150 million years ago. That is a number so large it is almost dreamlike to think about. 150 million years. At that time, dinosaurs were still walking through ancient forests. Enormous fern trees covered the ground. The first flowering plants were only just beginning to appear. Small, tentative, colorful arrivals in a world that had been green for hundreds of millions of years. The continents looked very different then, too. What we now call the Americas and Eurasia were still joined, or only recently separated. Great shallow seas covered land that is now desert. And yet, through all of that enormity, through all of that strangeness, there were already small, quiet ants moving through the leaf litter, doing what ants do. Scientists have discovered ant fossils preserved in amber, that beautiful golden tree resin that hardens over millions of years. And inside those pieces of amber, the ants look remarkably familiar. Their bodies have not changed very much at all. They found something that worked, and they kept it. Slowly, steadily. There is something deeply restful about an animal that has not needed to change, because it has always been exactly right for the world it lives in. Ants belong to the same group of insects as bees and wasps. This group is called Hymenoptera, which is a word that means membrane-winged. Even though most ants do not have wings, their ancestors did, and some ants today, particularly the queens and males during mating season, still grow wings for a brief and beautiful time. When scientists look at the family tree of insects, they can trace a quiet, unbroken line from those ancient winged ancestors all the way to the tiny ant carrying a crumb across your kitchen floor. It is a long, slow, continuous story, and we can take a moment to notice how everything in nature is connected in these soft, invisible ways. One creature giving rise to another. One generation quietly passing something along to the next. It happens slowly. It happens gently. And it has been happening for longer than our minds can truly imagine. There are more than 20,000 known species of ants in the world. 20,000 different kinds. Some are so small they could sit comfortably on the head of a pin. Others are large enough that you would certainly notice them walking across your hand. Some ants are red, some are black, some are a soft golden brown, and some, in tropical forests, are a deep, iridescent green that catches the light in quiet, surprising ways. Every continent on Earth has ants, except for Antarctica. And even in the coldest, driest, most challenging environments on land, you will almost always find ants somewhere nearby. They have adapted over millions of years to deserts and rainforests and mountains and caves and grasslands. Each species has found its own quiet niche, its own soft way of fitting into the world around it. Scientists estimate that at any given moment, there are approximately 20 quadrillion ants alive on Earth. That is 20 followed by 15 zeros. It is a number that is very hard to picture. If you tried to count them one by one, counting 1 ant per second, it would take you more than 600 million years to finish. And while you were counting, the ants would not stop. They would just keep going quietly, steadily, doing what they do. Some scientists have tried to calculate the total weight of all the ants on Earth, and they estimate that all ants together weigh roughly as much as all of humanity combined. Perhaps even more. This small and ancient creature, going about its quiet business, turns out to be one of the most significant forms of life on the surface of our planet. And it does its work without any urgency at all. Every ant colony begins with a queen. The queen is not a ruler in the way we might imagine. She does not give orders or direct traffic. She simply lays eggs. That is her one quiet purpose. A young queen, called an alate, is born with wings. On a warm day, when the conditions feel right, she takes to the air on what is called a nuptial flight, a slow, drifting journey during which she mates with one or more male ants. After mating, the male ants die. Their lives are brief. The queen, however, lands somewhere soft and sheltered, breaks off her own wings, gently, unhurriedly, digs a small chamber in the soil and begins. She lays her first eggs all by herself. She cares for them. She does not eat. She survives on the nutrients stored in her own flight muscles, which are no longer needed. And from that single small chamber, an entire world slowly begins. The queen of an ant colony can live for an extraordinarily long time. Some queen ants have been documented to live for 30 years or more. 30 years of quietly laying eggs. 30 years of sitting in the deep, cool heart of the nest while the colony grows and changes around her. This makes the queen ant one of the longest-lived insects in the world. For comparison, a housefly lives for about a month. A honeybee queen, herself considered long-lived, may live for 4 or 5 years. A queen ant at 30 years has outlived hundreds of thousands of her own workers. She has lived through entire human childhoods, through changes of season and weather and the slow shifting of the landscape above her underground chamber. The colony does not panic when a worker is lost. Another one simply takes its place. The whole system is soft and self-renewing, like water filling in behind a stone. There is no urgency. There is only the quiet, continuous rhythm of life. A rhythm that the queen maintains, gently, for decade after quiet decade. Worker ants are all female. Every ant you see carrying a leaf or building a tunnel or tending to larvae, every single one of those is female. Male ants exist only briefly and only for one purpose, to mate with a new queen. After their nuptial flight, males die within days. The colony itself, the workers, the nurses, the foragers, the guards, is an entirely female society. This is not unusual in the insect world. Bees and wasps follow similar patterns. But there is something quietly interesting about it. These small, female workers have given up reproduction entirely. They will never lay eggs. They devote their whole lives, every hour, every movement, to the colony. Not for themselves, for something larger. And they do it without complaint, without drama, without any sign of conflict at all. Just steady, soft, continuous work. Ant colonies can range in size from just a few dozen individuals to many millions. A small colony might consist of a single queen and perhaps 50 workers, living quietly under a rock in a garden. A large colony of leafcutter ants in South America might contain 8 million or more individuals, with a nest that extends several meters underground and covers an area larger than a small house. And yet both of these, the tiny colony and the enormous one, function in essentially the same quiet, orderly way. There is no chaos. There is no confusion. Each ant simply does what it is meant to do, guided by chemical signals and soft instinct. and the whole system hums along like a very gentle, very ancient machine. We can take a moment to notice how something so large can also feel so calm. Ants communicate almost entirely through chemicals called pheromones. They produce these chemicals from special glands in their bodies and release them into the air or onto surfaces as they move. Other ants detect these chemical signals with their antennae, those two delicate, constantly moving feelers on their heads. Pheromones can mean many things. They can say, "Here is food, follow this trail." They can say, "Danger is nearby, be alert." They can say, "I am a member of this colony, I belong here." They can even say, "I have died, please remove my body." Scientists studying ants have cataloged dozens of distinct pheromone compounds used by a single species, each one carrying specific, nuanced information. Some of these chemicals are produced in glands near the mouth parts. Others come from glands at the tip of the abdomen, or along the legs, or near the base of the antennae. Every time an ant moves through the world, it is leaving an invisible trail of information, a continuous, real-time broadcast of its state, its needs, and the state of the world it has just passed through. Ants respond to these signals instantly but calmly, adjusting their behavior as the chemical messages change. It is a language made entirely of scent, invisible, quiet, continuous. No voices, no noise, just a soft, invisible conversation happening all around us all the time. The pheromone trail that ants leave when they find food is one of nature's most elegant systems. When a forager ant discovers a food source, it picks up a small piece and walks back to the nest. As it walks, it periodically touches its abdomen to the ground, leaving a tiny chemical trace. Other ants detect this trace, follow it, and if they find the food good, they reinforce the trail on their return journey. The trail gets stronger and stronger, attracting more and more ants. But here is the soft and beautiful part. When the food runs out, the trail is no longer reinforced. It slowly fades. The chemical evaporates gently into the air. Ants stop following it, and the trail disappears as naturally and quietly as it appeared. No announcement is made. No signal is given. The system simply adjusts softly and continuously on its own. Gently moving forward, let us think about the ant's body for a moment. An ant has 6 legs, all insects do. These legs are attached to the middle section of its body, called the thorax. The legs are remarkably strong for their size. An ant can carry objects that weigh 50 times more than its own body. If a human being had the same relative strength, we could lift a small car. But ants do not use this strength in dramatic ways. They use it quietly, steadily, in the service of everyday tasks, carrying food, moving soil, tending eggs. Their strength is not about power for its own sake. It is simply about being sufficient for the work that needs to be done. And there is something peaceful in that. The idea of having exactly what you need, no more and no less, and using it gently every day. The ant's body is divided into 3 main sections: the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. Between the thorax and abdomen, many ant species have a narrow, constricted section called the petiole, which gives ants their distinctive pinched waist appearance. This narrow section actually serves an important function. It allows the ant to bend its body and direct its abdomen in different directions, which is useful for spraying chemicals, stinging, and navigating tight spaces in the nest. The entire body of an ant is covered in a hard outer shell called an exoskeleton. This shell is made of a material called chitin, which is lightweight but surprisingly strong. It protects the ant from dehydration and from physical damage. It is, in a quiet way, a suit of armor, simple, ancient, and perfectly fitted. Ants do not have lungs. They breathe through tiny openings along the sides of their bodies called spiracles. Air moves in and out of these small holes passively, driven by movement and diffusion rather than by any active pumping. Inside the body, A network of very fine tubes called tracheae carries oxygen directly to the cells that need it. This system is extremely efficient at the small scale of an ant's body. It does not require a heart to pump blood to the lungs, or lungs to extract oxygen, or a complex respiratory system. Just small holes in the sides. Just soft, quiet breathing happening everywhere at once, distributed across the whole body. Ants can actually hold their spiracles closed for periods of time, a behavior called discontinuous gas exchange, which helps them conserve water and prevent desiccation. They open their spiracles in brief, controlled bursts, releasing accumulated carbon dioxide and taking in a breath of oxygen, then closing them again. In this way, their breathing is not continuous and rhythmic as ours is, but intermittent and gentle, a soft pulse of openness and closure happening many times a minute across the whole length of the body. It is, in its own small way, one of the most elegant breathing systems in nature. Simple, quiet, and continuous. Ants do have a heart, though it is very different from ours. The ant's heart is a long, thin tube that runs along the top of its abdomen. It pumps a pale, clear fluid called hemolymph, which is not exactly blood, but serves a similar purpose, slowly through the body. This fluid carries nutrients and hormones, but it does not carry oxygen the way our blood does. That job, as we just noticed, is handled by the tracheal system. The heart beats slowly and steadily, pushing the hemolymph in gentle waves. There is something almost meditative about imagining that tiny, quiet heartbeat, a soft, slow pulse running through a creature no larger than a grain of rice. A heartbeat that has been going in one form or another for 150 million years. Now, as we continue, let us think about the ant's antennae. These are perhaps the most important sensory organs an ant has. Each antenna is made up of several segments connected by flexible joints, and the ant moves them constantly, sweeping, tapping, touching, sensing. The antennae detect pheromones, of course, but they also sense air movement, temperature, humidity, and vibration. Some ants can even use their antennae to detect magnetic fields, helping them navigate using the Earth's own gentle magnetic pull. When two ants meet, they often touch antennae briefly, a soft, fleeting exchange of chemical information. They can recognize nest mates, identify enemies, and assess the state of the colony in just a moment of quiet contact. It is a greeting and a conversation and a status report all at once. The eyes of ants are compound eyes, meaning they are made up of many tiny individual lenses packed closely together. Each lens captures a slightly different angle of view, and the ant's brain combines all of these into a single mosaic image of the world. Compound eyes are not as sharp as human eyes in terms of detail, but they are extremely good at detecting movement. A shadow passing overhead, a sudden shift in light. These things are immediately noticeable to an ant. Interestingly, many ant species also have 3 additional simple eyes on the top of their heads, called ocelli. These do not form detailed images. They sense light and dark, helping the ant navigate by the position of the sun. Together, the compound eyes and the ocelli give the ant a quiet but comprehensive picture of its luminous world. Most ants navigate primarily through smell and chemical memory rather than visual landmarks. A foraging ant leaving the nest will memorize the chemical composition of its home territory, the scent of the soil, the trace chemicals in the air. It lays its own subtle scent trail as it moves. When it is ready to return, it follows these chemical cues back through a landscape that might look quite featureless to us. Some species, however, are surprisingly good visual navigators. Desert ants in particular, living in environments with few landmarks, have been found to use the pattern of polarized light in the sky, as well as the position of the sun, to navigate with extraordinary precision. They can find their way home across hundreds of meters of flat, featureless desert, quietly, confidently, without ever getting lost. There is no need to rush. let us take a quiet moment to think about the ant nest itself. What most people think of as an ant nest, that small mound of loose soil in a garden, is only the surface, the tip of something much larger. Below ground, the nest extends through a network of tunnels and chambers, each one shaped by the patient, unhurried work of hundreds or thousands of worker ants over days and weeks. There are chambers for storing food, chambers where the queen rests and lays her eggs, chambers where larvae are kept and cared for, chambers where pupae, the quiet, still, transforming forms of developing ants, are arranged in soft, organized rows. There are sometimes separate chambers for waste and deceased nestmates. There are chambers positioned at specific depths to take advantage of the Earth's natural temperature gradients. Warmer near the surface in summer, cooler and more stable deeper down. The workers move their precious cargo, eggs, larvae, pupae, between these chambers throughout the day, tracking the temperature with remarkable precision and positioning the developing young exactly where conditions are best for their growth. The whole structure is carefully planned, not by any single ant, not by any leader or architect, but by the collective, quiet intelligence of the colony itself. Ant nests are engineered with remarkable sophistication. Research has shown that many ant species design their tunnels to maximize airflow and regulate temperature and humidity. Some nests have multiple entrances that allow air to circulate, warm air rising out of one entrance while cooler air flows in through another, keeping the interior at a stable, comfortable temperature even as the surface above bakes in the sun. Some species seal their entrances during rain to prevent flooding. Others build drainage channels. The leafcutter ant nests of South America have been studied by engineers who were amazed by their structural complexity. Chambers connected by efficient tunnel networks, with ventilation that rivals some human designs. The ants do not plan this consciously. It emerges from very simple, repeated behaviors. And yet the result is a building of quiet, functional beauty. Slowly, gently, let us think about what ants eat. Most ant species are omnivores. They eat a wide variety of things. Many species collect seeds and store them in underground granaries. Some hunt small insects or scavenge the bodies of dead creatures. Some collect nectar from flowers. Some feed on the sugary secretions of other insects, like aphids. Some, in the deep, humid forests of the tropics, cultivate their own food, growing fungus underground in vast, carefully tended gardens. The diets of different ant species are as varied and interesting as the ants themselves. But in every case, the gathering and storing of food is done with the same quality, quietly, steadily, without haste. Food is not gathered for luxury. It is gathered because it is needed, and that is enough. Leafcutter ants are among the most fascinating foragers in the insect world. These ants, found in Central and South America, cut circular pieces from leaves using their sharp mandibles and carry these pieces back to their underground nests. But they do not eat the leaves. The leaves are chewed into a soft pulp and used as a growing medium for a specific species of fungus, which the ants then eat. This relationship between the ants and the fungus is ancient. It has been going on for tens of millions of years. The fungus has adapted so completely to being cultivated by ants that it can no longer survive without them. And the ants, in turn, depend entirely on the fungus for their nutrition. Two very different forms of life, quietly and completely dependent on each other. There is something very soft and comforting about that kind of partnership. The eyes of ants are compound eyes, meaning they are made up of many tiny individual lenses packed closely together. Each lens captures a slightly different angle of view, and the ant's brain combines all of these into a single mosaic image of the world. Compound eyes are not as sharp as human eyes in terms of detail, but they are extremely good at detecting movement. A shadow passing overhead, a sudden shift in light. These things are immediately noticeable to an ant. Interestingly, Many ant species also have 3 additional simple eyes on the top of their heads, called ocelli. These do not form detailed images. They sense light and dark, helping the ant navigate by the position of the sun. Together, the compound eyes and the ocelli give the ant a quiet but comprehensive picture of its luminous world. Most ants navigate primarily through smell and chemical memory rather than visual landmarks. A foraging ant leaving the nest will memorize the chemical composition of its home territory, the scent of the soil, the trace chemicals in the air. It lays its own subtle scent trail as it moves. When it is ready to return, it follows these chemical cues back through a landscape that might look quite featureless to us. Some species, however, are surprisingly good visual navigators. Desert ants in particular, living in environments with few landmarks, have been found to use the pattern of polarized light in the sky, as well as the position of the sun, to navigate with extraordinary precision. They can find their way home across hundreds of meters of flat, featureless desert, quietly, confidently, without ever getting lost. There is no need to rush. Let us take a quiet moment to think about the ant nest itself. What most people think of as an ant nest, that small mound of loose soil in a garden, is only the surface, the tip of something much larger. Below ground, the nest extends through a network of tunnels and chambers, each one shaped by the patient, unhurried work of hundreds or thousands of worker ants over days and weeks. There are chambers for storing food, chambers where the queen rests and lays her eggs, chambers where larvae are kept and cared for, chambers where pupae, the quiet, still, transforming forms of developing ants, are arranged in soft, organized rows. There are sometimes separate chambers for waste and deceased nestmates. There are chambers positioned at specific depths to take advantage of the Earth's natural temperature gradients. Warmer near the surface in summer, cooler and more stable deeper down. The workers move their precious cargo, eggs, larvae, pupae, between these chambers throughout the day, tracking the temperature with remarkable precision and positioning the developing young exactly where conditions are best for their growth. The whole structure is carefully planned, not by any single ant, not by any leader or architect, but by the collective, quiet intelligence of the colony itself. Ant nests are engineered with remarkable sophistication. Research has shown that many ant species design their tunnels to maximize airflow and regulate temperature and humidity. Some nests have multiple entrances that allow air to circulate, warm air rising out of one entrance while cooler air flows in through another, keeping the interior at a stable, comfortable temperature even as the surface above bakes in the sun. Some species seal their entrances during rain to prevent flooding. Others build drainage channels. The leafcutter ant nests of South America have been studied by engineers who were amazed by their structural complexity. Chambers connected by efficient tunnel networks, with ventilation that rivals some human designs. The ants do not plan this consciously. It emerges from very simple, repeated behaviors. And yet the result is a building of quiet, functional beauty. Slowly, gently, let us think about what ants eat. Most ant species are omnivores. They eat a wide variety of things. Many species collect seeds and store them in underground granaries. Some hunt small insects or scavenge the bodies of dead creatures. Some collect nectar from flowers. Some feed on the sugary secretions of other insects, like aphids. Some, in the deep, humid forests of the tropics, cultivate their own food, growing fungus underground in vast, carefully tended gardens. The diets of different ant species are as varied and interesting as the ants themselves. But in every case, the gathering and storing of food is done with the same quality, quietly, steadily, without haste. Food is not gathered for luxury. It is gathered because it is needed, and that is enough. Leafcutter ants are among the most fascinating foragers in the insect world. These ants, found in Central and South America, cut circular pieces from leaves using their sharp mandibles and carry these pieces back to their underground nests. But they do not eat the leaves. The leaves are chewed into a soft pulp and used as a growing medium for a specific species of fungus, which the ants then eat. This relationship between the ants and the fungus is ancient. It has been going on for tens of millions of years. The fungus has adapted so completely to being cultivated by ants that it can no longer survive without them. And the ants, in turn, depend entirely on the fungus for their nutrition. Two very different forms of life, quietly and completely dependent on each other. There is something very soft and comforting about that kind of partnership. The leafcutter ant's fungus garden is maintained with extraordinary care. Worker ants continuously weed the garden, removing any foreign fungus or bacterial growth that might compete with their crop. They apply secretions from special glands that contain antibiotic compounds, suppressing harmful microbes. They adjust the humidity and temperature of the garden chambers. Some researchers have compared the sophistication of leafcutter ant agriculture to early human farming. And in some ways, the ants surpass us. Their agricultural system has been refined over tens of millions of years, achieving a stability and efficiency that human agriculture has not yet fully matched. And yet it all happens quietly underground, without planning, without language, without tools beyond the ants' own bodies. Just soft, patient, continuous work. Some ants keep other insects, much the way humans keep livestock. The most common example involves aphids, small, soft-bodied insects that feed on plant sap. As aphids eat, they produce a sugary liquid called honeydew, which many ant species find very appealing. Ants will actually tend herds of aphids, protecting them from predators, moving them to fresh plants when their food source is exhausted, even sheltering them inside the ant nest during cold weather. In return, the ants gently stroke the aphids with their antennae to encourage the aphids to produce honeydew. This relationship is very old. Some ant species have been farming aphids for so many millions of years that the aphids have lost their ability to escape from ants. They have become, in a quiet and gentle way, completely domesticated. Some ant species are also farmers of a different kind. They actively tend and protect certain plants, and in return the plants provide them with food and shelter. In Central America, a species called the acacia ant lives inside the swollen thorns of acacia trees. The tree provides the ants with hollow spaces for their nest, and with special protein-rich nodules at the tips of its leaves. The ants, in return, protect the tree aggressively, chasing away herbivores, trimming competing vegetation. Studies have shown that acacia trees without their ant partners are quickly overgrown and damaged. The relationship is ancient and balanced. Each partner provides exactly what the other needs. It is a quiet, enduring friendship, one that neither side planned and neither side could now live without. Now, let us think softly about the idea of an ant colony as a single organism. Scientists sometimes describe a colony as a superorganism, meaning that while each individual ant is a living creature, the colony as a whole behaves like a single, unified entity with its own intelligence, its own responses, its own homeostasis. No individual ant has a complete picture of the colony's needs. No ant decides what the colony should do, and yet the colony makes decisions about where to forage, where to expand, when to move, when to defend. These decisions emerge from the collective behavior of thousands of individuals, each following simple rules and responding to local information. The result is something that feels, from the outside, like a quiet and distributed intelligence. When a colony is stressed, by food shortage, by predator pressure, by disease, it responds in coordinated ways, adjusting the behavior of thousands of individuals simultaneously. When conditions improve, the response reverses. The colony breathes in and out with the conditions around it, expanding and contracting, quickening and slowing. as if it were a single living thing responding to its environment, which, in a meaningful sense, it is. The concept of collective intelligence in ants has inspired many areas of human research and technology. Computer scientists have developed algorithms based on ant foraging behavior, called ant colony optimization, which are used to solve complex routing and logistics problems. These algorithms mimic the way ants find the shortest path to a food source. Many agents explore randomly, and the best paths are reinforced over time. This approach has been used to improve the routing of data through internet networks, the scheduling of airline routes, and the planning of delivery systems. The quiet, unhurried behavior of a foraging ant, it turns out, contains a kind of natural mathematics, a soft elegance that can be translated into code and used to make our complex world run a little more smoothly. Gently moving forward, let us consider how ant colonies handle conflict. Ant species frequently encounter each other in their territories, and competition between colonies can be intense. Some species are highly aggressive, sending out raiding parties to attack neighboring colonies. But other species have evolved more subtle strategies. Some ants engage in what scientists call tournaments, ritualized displays of numbers and strength, in which columns of ants from rival colonies meet and assess each other without actually fighting. The colony with fewer ants eventually withdraws. The conflict is resolved through information, not violence. There is something quietly interesting about a creature that has developed a way to compete without always having to fight, a soft and ancient form of negotiation. Slave-making ants are one of the more unusual phenomena in the ant world, though the name is somewhat dramatic for what is actually a quiet chemical process. Certain species of ants raid the nests of other ant species and steal their pupae, the developing young ants in their cocoons. These stolen pupae are brought back to the raiding colony's nest. When they emerge as adults, they are coated in the chemical signature of the new colony and simply begin to behave as if they had always lived there. They forage, care for young, and maintain the nest for their captors. They do not experience this as distress. They simply follow the chemical cues that tell them where home is. It is a quiet chemical deception rather than a dramatic conflict. And it has been going on unhurried and unchanged for millions of years. Army ants are perhaps the most dramatic foragers in the ant world, though their lives are surprisingly rhythmic and predictable. Army ants, found in tropical regions of Africa and the Americas, do not build permanent nests. Instead, they move constantly, forming temporary camps called bivouacs by linking their own bodies together into living walls and ceilings that shelter the queen and her eggs. Every few weeks, when the queen is ready to lay a new batch of eggs, the colony pauses and becomes stationary for a period of about 3 weeks. Then, when the new workers have hatched and are ready to march, the colony moves again. Back and forth, stationary and mobile. It is a cycle as regular and gentle as the seasons. Even something as seemingly restless as an army ant has its own deep, quiet rhythm. Now let us move softly into thinking about ant communication through sound. Although ants primarily use chemical signals, some species also communicate through vibration. Many ants produce sounds by rubbing a ridged area of their abdomen against another part of their body, a process called stridulation. These vibrations travel through the ground and can be detected by other ants. Carpenter ants have been found to use stridulation to signal alarm inside the nest. The vibrations travel through the wood of the nest and alert other workers. Some ant species also tap their heads against the ground in rhythmic patterns. And there are ants that can detect the stridulations of their own queen, a specific vibrational signature that may help workers locate and attend to her in the complex darkness of the deep nest. Scientists have recorded these sounds and analyzed them, finding that different species produce different patterns, some complex, some very simple, and that ants respond to these patterns with remarkable specificity. A slightly altered pattern may produce no response, while the correct pattern triggers immediate behavioral change. It is a language of touch and vibration, passed through the earth and the wood and the soft walls of the nest. Quiet sounds, soft pulses, an entire language beneath our feet. There is no need to rush. Let us think about one of the most beautiful structures ants create, the fire ant raft. When fire ants are caught in a flood, they do something extraordinary. They link their bodies together, leg to leg, jaw to jaw, forming a living, waterproof raft that can float on the surface of water. The ants on the bottom of the raft are not held underwater. The surface tension of water, combined with the tiny air pockets trapped between their bodies, keeps the whole structure floating. The queen is carefully positioned in the center and protected. The raft can survive on water for days or even weeks. And when the raft encounters land, the ants simply walk ashore and begin again. No panic, no confusion, just a quiet, elegant, collective solution to a very difficult problem. The fire ant raft is not organized by any individual ant. It forms spontaneously through the simple behaviors of thousands of ants responding to rising water. Each ant clings to its neighbors. Each ant moves to fill gaps. And the raft assembles itself, smoothly and without instruction. Scientists who study these rafts have found that the outer layer of ants is made up primarily of younger workers, while older ants tend to be positioned toward the interior with the queen and the young. This distribution of risk, younger ants on the outside, the most valuable individuals protected in the center, emerges without any planning. It is just the quiet outcome of how ants respond to each other under stress. Simple rules, collective wisdom, a soft and living boat. Slowly, gently, let us think about how ant colonies respond to death. When an ant dies, it releases a chemical called oleic acid, a specific signal that other ants recognize as the smell of death. When a living ant encounters another ant producing this chemical, it picks up the body and carries it to a specific area outside the nest called the midden or refuse pile. This happens automatically, triggered entirely by the chemical signal. Interestingly, if you apply oleic acid to a living ant, its nestmates will carry it to the midden, repeatedly, as fast as it can return. The living ant does not protest this. It simply walks back, and it is carried out again. The colony responds not to the individual, but to the signal. It is a quiet, almost impersonal system, but it keeps the nest clean and the colony healthy. Some ants engage in a behavior called social immunity, which is one of the most quietly remarkable phenomena in the insect world. When a forager ant encounters a pathogen, a fungus or a bacterium that could infect the colony, it does not simply go back to the nest and spread the infection. Instead, infected ants often leave the colony voluntarily, moving away to die alone. Other ants groom each other constantly and intensively, removing pathogens from each other's bodies before they can establish an infection. Some species apply antimicrobial compounds secreted from their own bodies to nestmates during grooming. The whole colony acts as a single immune system, scanning, cleaning, quarantining, treating. It is collective care expressed through quiet, unhurried physical contact. Every ant looking after every other ant. Carpenter ants build their nests in wood, not by eating the wood, as termites do, but by carving smooth, clean tunnels through it with their powerful mandibles. The tunnels of a carpenter ant nest are remarkably smooth, with almost no debris or roughness. The removed wood is carried out of the nest in small pieces, leaving a tidy pile of sawdust called frass outside the nest entrance. Inside, the galleries are organized and spacious. A mature carpenter ant nest may contain a few thousand workers and extend through a significant volume of wood, a log, a tree trunk, or even the structural timbers of a building. Despite their reputation as pests, carpenter ants are simply doing what they have always done. Slowly, carefully, creating a space that is exactly right for their needs. Now, as we continue, let us take a quiet moment to think about harvester ants and their role in the ecosystem. Harvester ants collect seeds, sometimes in enormous quantities, and store them in underground chambers called granaries. In the process, they move and bury seeds that might never otherwise be planted. Many plant species in arid and semi-arid environments depend on harvester ants to disperse and bury their seeds. Without ants, these plants might not reproduce successfully. Ants, in turn, sometimes benefit from the nutrition in the seeds they collect. But occasionally, seeds escape from ant granaries or are abandoned, and they germinate underground, finding themselves already buried at just the right depth. An accidental garden, tended by creatures that never intended to garden at all. Quietly, beautifully, without plan. The relationship between ants and seeds is so important that it has its own scientific name, myrmecochory, which means ant dispersal of seeds. Roughly 11,000 plant species worldwide depend on ants to disperse their seeds. Many of these plants have evolved seeds with a special fatty attachment called an elaeosome, which ants find nutritious and appealing. The ants carry the seed back to the nest, remove and eat the elaeosome, and discard the seed in the nest's waste area or deposit it in a location where it has a good chance of germinating. Some plants produce seeds that almost perfectly mimic ant pupae in shape and chemical composition, making ants even more likely to carry them. The plant speaks the ant's language, chemically softly, and the ants respond, not knowing they are being asked a favor. Gently moving forward, let us think about desert ants, one of the most quietly extraordinary groups of all. The Saharan silver ant lives in one of the harshest environments on Earth, where surface temperatures can reach 70 degrees Celsius in the midday sun. This ant forages only during the hottest part of the day when its predators, mainly lizards, have retreated into the shade. It moves faster than almost any other insect, covering a meter per second in short bursts, finding the bodies of creatures killed by the heat, collecting them quickly, and returning home. Its body is covered in special triangular hairs that reflect sunlight and radiate heat away. It tolerates temperatures that would kill virtually any other animal. And it does all of this calmly, efficiently, and quickly. Not out of urgency, but simply because that is when the opportunity presents itself. The Saharan silver ant navigates home after a foraging trip using a process called path integration. As the ant runs outward from the nest, turning, pausing, searching, a part of its nervous system continuously tracks every turn, every distance, every direction. It keeps a running calculation of its current position relative to home. When the ant picks up a food item and decides to return, it does not retrace its winding outward path. It simply turns and walks in a straight line directly toward home. A straight line calculated from all those accumulated movements. This process is called dead reckoning, the same technique used by sailors before GPS was available. The ant carries an internal map, quietly updated with every step, always knowing exactly where home is. Even in a featureless desert, even after a journey of hundreds of meters. Now let us think slowly about weaver ants. These remarkable insects build their nests in trees by sewing leaves together, and they use their own larvae as living tools to do it. Adult weaver ants grab a leaf and bend it toward another leaf. Other adults hold the leaves in position, gripping the leaf edge with their legs and their mandibles, forming living bridges across the gap. Then they pick up a larva, gently, carefully, and move it back and forth between the leaf edges. As the larva moves, it secretes silk from its mouth, and that silk binds the leaves together. The larva does not seem to be harmed by this process. It simply produces silk when held in the right way and moved in the right direction, and the adults use that silk to weave their nest. If the gap is large, many workers will work in parallel, a row of ants holding the leaves, another row carrying larvae back and forth along the seam. The whole operation is smooth and organized, with different groups of ants performing different tasks without any direction or instruction. The nest that results is beautiful, a green, living structure hanging among the branches, strong enough to last through rain and wind. A home woven from living material, by living hands, in the quiet canopy. Weaver ant nests can be quite large, sometimes encompassing many trees connected by a network of leaf nests and ant highways along the branches. A single colony may occupy a dozen or more trees over an area of many hundreds of square meters. The colony defends this territory aggressively against other weaver ant colonies, other ant species, and even large animals. But within the territory, everything is orderly and calm. Workers move along established routes. Foragers collect food. Larvae are tended in the innermost nests, close to the queen. The whole large territory functions like a single, distributed home, wide, interconnected, and quietly organized. Each tree is a room. Each branch is a corridor. And the ants move through it all as if they know every inch of it. Because, of course, they do. Let us take a quiet moment to think about how ants deal with rain. For a small insect, a single raindrop can be a significant event. The impact of a falling raindrop hitting an ant is roughly equivalent to a large boulder falling on a person. Yet ants survive rainstorms routinely. Many species seal the entrances to their nests when rain begins, detecting the change in air pressure, humidity, and vibration that precedes rainfall, and acting before the first drops fall. Others have nests designed to drain quickly, with water flowing along carefully angled tunnels and out through specific exit points. Underground, the nest stays dry. The colony continues its work undisturbed. A rainstorm that would seem dramatic and disruptive to us is, for an ant colony, simply another condition to be managed calmly. Slowly, gently, let us consider the role of ants in the soil. Ants are among the most important soil engineers on the planet. As they build tunnels and chambers, they move enormous quantities of soil to the surface, aerating the ground, improving drainage, and mixing organic material through the soil profile. Scientists estimate that ants move as much or more soil than earthworms in many ecosystems. Their tunnels create pathways for water and air to penetrate deep into the earth, which benefits plants and the microorganisms that live in the soil. In areas where ants have been experimentally removed, the soil gradually becomes more compacted and less fertile. The ants, without knowing it, are gardeners of the ground itself. Every tunnel they dig is a gift to the ecosystem they live in. Ants also play an important role in decomposition, the quiet process by which dead things are broken down and recycled into the soil. Many ant species scavenge the bodies of dead animals, carrying them piece by piece back to the nest where they are consumed. This removes organic material from the surface, prevents the spread of pathogens, and returns nutrients to the soil. In tropical forests, ants are estimated to be responsible for the removal of a significant percentage of all small animal carcasses. They are nature's quiet cleanup crew, moving through the forest floor day and night, taking nothing to waste. In this way, every ant is also a recycler, returning matter to the earth so that it can be used again, transformed, given a new form and a new life. Now, as we continue, let us think about ant pupae, those quiet, still forms in which developing ants rest between the larval and adult stages. In many species, the pupa is enclosed in a silken cocoon. The ant inside is completely still. It does not eat, does not move, does not respond to the world around it. And yet inside that stillness, a profound transformation is taking place. The larval body is being reorganized, cell by cell and tissue by tissue, into the adult form. Legs form. Eyes develop. The internal organs take their final shape. It takes anywhere from 1 to several weeks, depending on the species and the temperature. And at the end of it, a complete adult ant emerges, ready to take its place in the colony. From stillness, new life. From quiet, a beginning. There is something very beautiful about that. The development of an ant from egg to adult is called complete metamorphosis, the same process used by butterflies, beetles, and flies. The egg hatches into a larva, a soft, legless grub that does nothing but eat and grow. The larva is entirely dependent on adult workers, who bring it food and clean it and protect it. When the larva has grown enough, it stops eating, forms a pupa, and transforms. The adult that emerges is fully developed but very pale at first. Its exoskeleton needs time to harden and darken. For the first few hours or days, a new adult ant is slightly delicate, still finding its place. But very quickly it settles into its role, and the work continues. Always quietly, the work continues. Gently moving forward, let us think about the division of labor inside an ant colony. Not all worker ants do the same job. In many species, workers of different sizes specialize in different tasks. This is called a caste system, though it is quite different from how we might use that word for humans. Large workers, sometimes called majors or soldiers, have disproportionately large heads and powerful mandibles, and they focus on defense, carrying large food items, or in some species, grinding seeds. Small workers, called miners, tend to be more numerous and are responsible for most of the routine tasks: foraging, caring for young, maintaining tunnels. This division allows the colony to be efficient, each type of body well suited to its particular work. Nothing is wasted. Everything fits. Interestingly, a worker ant's job can change over the course of its lifetime. In many species, young workers start as nurses, staying deep in the nest, caring for eggs and larvae. As they age, they gradually move to less sensitive jobs and eventually become foragers, venturing outside the nest into a world full of risks. This progression from nursing to foraging is so consistent that it has been described as an age-based division of labor. Younger, more physiologically valuable workers are protected inside. Older workers, whose remaining life is shorter, take on the more dangerous outside work. It is a quiet, unhurried form of care. The colony always protecting its most valuable members, always placing those with the most to lose in the safest positions. There is something very gentle about that calculus. Let us take a soft moment to notice what happens when a forager ant fails to return to the nest. The colony does not grieve. It does not search. Other ants simply continue their work, and gradually, mathematically, the colony adjusts its behavior based on the rate of return from foraging. If fewer ants are returning, fewer new foragers are sent out. If the rate of return is high, more ants go out. The colony continuously monitors its own success, not through any conscious awareness, but through the aggregate behavior of thousands of individuals. No ant knows the big picture, but the big picture is maintained softly and automatically by all of them together. It is one of the quietest and most elegant forms of feedback in the natural world. Now let us drift gently into thinking about the chemistry of ant communication in more detail. Scientists have cataloged dozens of different pheromones used by a single ant species. Each one carries different information. Some evaporate quickly and carry short-range, immediate messages, like alarm signals that fade within seconds, so they do not cause unnecessary panic over a threat that has already passed. Others are stable and long-lasting, like the trail pheromones that mark reliable food sources or paths between nest chambers. Some pheromones are personal identification marks, telling other ants exactly which colony and which caste an individual belongs to. The specificity of these chemicals is remarkable. In some species, scientists have identified compounds that differ by only a few atoms from each other, and yet ants can distinguish between them perfectly, responding to one with alarm and to another with recruitment, to one with aggression, and to another with grooming. The ant's chemical vocabulary is written at the molecular level, in a script too small for us to read without instruments, but instantly legible to every ant that encounters it. All of it invisible, all of it quiet, all of it continuously flowing through the world beneath our feet. Some ant species are capable of something that seems almost impossibly sophisticated. They can use tools. African Matabele ants, after attacking termite colonies, have been observed picking up soil particles and using them to carry liquid food back to the nest, essentially using pieces of debris as a kind of sponge or container. Other ant species have been seen using small pebbles to plug holes in their nest walls. Some ants use fragments of leaves or soil to absorb nectar from a source that would otherwise be inaccessible. Tool use in ants is not as complex or flexible as tool use in primates, but it exists. These small creatures, guided entirely by instinct and chemical signals, have found ways to use the materials around them to solve problems. Quietly, without hands, without training, simply and effectively. Slowly, gently, let us think about ant venom. Many ant species can sting, and the venom they inject is chemically complex and interesting. The fire ant's venom, for example, is primarily composed of a compound called solanopsin, which is unusual among insect venoms in being an alkaloid, more similar to some plant poisons than to the protein-based venoms of bees and wasps. Solanopsin causes a burning sensation and can trigger a severe allergic reaction in sensitive individuals. But in small amounts, it is also antimicrobial, and fire ants use it not just for defense and attack, but to sterilize the surfaces of their nest. The same chemical that is a weapon is also a cleaning agent. In the ant's world, everything has more than one use. Everything is efficient. Everything is quiet and purposeful. The bullet ant of Central and South America has one of the most intensely painful stings of any insect. Its sting is described as producing a deep, throbbing pain that lasts for several hours, often compared to being shot, hence the name. Interestingly, bullet ant venom has been studied by scientists for its potential medical applications. The compound ponerotoxin, found in bullet ant venom, affects nerve cells in a specific and unusual way, and researchers are investigating its properties for possible use in pain management and neuroscience research. The ant uses this chemical for defense and to subdue prey. It is a powerful tool for a small creature. But even here, in one of nature's more intense chemicals, there is quiet potential, a kind of slow unfolding of usefulness. Now, as we continue, let us think about the relationship between ants and fungi in a very different way. The story of the zombie ant. In tropical forests, there exists a genus of parasitic fungi called Ophiocordyceps that infects certain ant species. When an ant is infected, the fungus grows through its body, and somehow, through mechanisms scientists are still investigating, it alters the ant's behavior. The infected ant leaves the colony, climbs a plant stem to a specific height above the forest floor, bites down hard onto the underside of a leaf or a twig and dies. The fungus then grows out of the ant's head and releases spores from that precise, elevated position, where they fall onto other ants passing below. The ant does not suffer consciously. It simply follows new instructions, written in chemistry, until it is still. What makes the zombie ant story so quietly fascinating to scientists is how specific the fungus's behavior control is. The infected ant does not climb too high or too low. It chooses leaves at a very consistent height above the forest floor. It bites at a very consistent time of day. And the location it chooses is almost always on the northern side of the plant, in a specific range of temperature and humidity that is ideal for the fungus's spore dispersal. How does the fungus communicate these specific requirements to the ant's nervous system? Scientists are still working to understand this. but it suggests a level of precision in the chemical control of behavior that is quite extraordinary. The forest around us is full of these quiet, invisible conversations, things happening in the dark and the dampness that we are only beginning to understand. Gently moving forward, let's think about the idea of sacrifice in ant colonies. In many species, certain individuals are willing to sacrifice themselves for the good of the colony, not through conscious choice, but through evolved behavior. Carpenter ant workers, when facing an overwhelming threat, will grab an intruder with their mandibles and hold on, even at the cost of their own lives, giving other colony members time to escape or respond. Some Camponotus species in Southeast Asia have workers whose abdominal glands are so filled with toxic secretions that, when attacked, they can contract their muscles violently, rupturing their own bodies and spraying poison on attackers. This autothesis, self-sacrifice, kills the ant instantly, but it protects the colony, a quiet chemical act of devotion. Let us take a quiet moment to think about the pace of an ant's life from the ant's perspective. Ants, like many small insects, likely experience time differently from us. Their nervous systems process information faster relative to their size. A second for an ant may feel, in some sense, like more time than a second feels to us. Research on other small, fast-moving animals suggests that they perceive the world in finer time slices, their brains processing more individual frames of experience per unit of time. This is speculative when applied to ants, but it is a quietly interesting idea. The ant moving quickly across a leaf. Might it be experiencing something richer and more detailed than we imagine? Every moment a texture, a scent, a vibration, a whole world fitting into a life measured in weeks. Now let us drift gently to thinking about ant queens and their reproductive pace. A queen ant in a large colony may lay eggs at a rate of thousands per day. Every day. For years. For decades. The queen of some army ant species lays 3 to 4 million eggs every month during her reproductive peak. That is a sustained, quiet act of biological production happening deep underground, in the dark, continuously. Each egg is small and white, almost invisible to the naked eye. Each one represents a potential new member of the colony, a worker or a future queen or a male. Workers tend the eggs constantly, keeping them at the right temperature and humidity, moving them to different chambers as conditions change. The queen herself neither tends nor guards. She simply produces. Steadily. Quietly. Always. Slowly, gently, let us think about how ants sleep. Do ants sleep? For a long time, it was assumed that ants, being insects, do not sleep in the way that mammals do. But research has shown that they do rest. Fire ant workers take hundreds of short naps throughout the day, each one lasting about 1 minute. Their antennae droop. Their movements stop. They enter a brief, quiet period of inactivity that has some features of sleep. These power naps are distributed throughout the day, different workers resting at different times, so the colony is never fully asleep. Queens, interestingly, take longer and deeper rest periods. Researchers observed fire ant queens sleeping for about 9 hours per day in irregular 90-second bouts. Even in a creature as industrious as an ant, there is rest. Even in the most working of all creatures, there is a moment of stillness. We are now halfway through our journey together. 59 quiet facts and 60 more to come. And perhaps by now your body has grown a little heavier, a little softer. Perhaps the thoughts that were busy when you arrived have grown quieter, less insistent. The world outside this moment has grown a little more distant. And that is exactly right. There is nothing you need to do right now. Nowhere you need to go. You are here, in this quiet space, following the soft and ancient story of these small creatures who have been going about their work since before the first flower opened, before the first bird sang, before the first mammal found its way through the dark. They were here before almost everything we know, and they will, in all likelihood, be here long after. Steady, quiet, continuing. Let us continue very slowly, very gently, through the remaining half of our exploration. Now, as we continue, let us think about the sense of touch in ants. We have talked about smell and sight and hearing, but touch may be the most intimate of the ant senses. Workers constantly touch each other, tapping with their antennae, grooming with their mouth parts, pressing their bodies together in the narrow tunnels of the nest. Through touch, they pass information and food and comfort. They groom each other's antennae, their legs, the joints of their exoskeleton. This grooming is not just about cleanliness. It is also a constant exchange of chemical information. A nestmate smells right or does not smell right. A larva needs attention or does not. The nest is healthy or it is not. All of this is communicated through touch. Soft, quiet, continuous contact. In some ant species, food is shared between nestmates through a process called trophallaxis, in which one ant regurgitates a droplet of liquid food from its crop, a special food storage area in the abdomen, and feeds it directly to another ant mouth to mouth. This process is not just about nutrition. It is also a way of spreading chemical information throughout the colony. The liquid food carries hormones, pheromones, and other molecular signals that help coordinate the colony's behavior. A forager that has found a rich food source does not just bring food. It brings a chemical report about the outside world, delivered mouth to every nestmate it feeds. The whole colony is continuously updated in this way, through an invisible exchange of information wrapped in nourishment. Trophallaxis also plays a role in colony integration and social bonding. Experiments have shown that when a food or chemical is introduced into one ant in a colony through this feeding behavior, it can spread through the entire colony within just a few hours, as each ant feeds another. This means the colony functions almost like a single circulatory system, substances moving through the network of social contacts until every individual has been reached. Scientists have used this property to trace social networks within ant colonies, mapping who feeds whom and how quickly substances move from individual to individual. The result is a picture of the colony as a deeply interconnected web, where nothing remains isolated for long. Everything is shared. Everything flows. Quietly, continuously. Let us take a soft moment to think about the relationship between ants and myrmecophiles. A myrmecophile is an organism, an insect, a mite, a spider, a rove beetle, or even a butterfly larva, that lives inside ant nests, exploiting the ant colony in various ways. Some myrmecophiles are so perfectly adapted to life in the ant colony that they are effectively invisible to the ants. They produce exactly the right chemical signals to smell like nestmates. Some are even groomed and fed by the ants. Some produce secretions that the ants find appealing, in exchange for protection and shelter. The ant nest, far from being a closed and exclusive community, is actually home to dozens of different species, all quietly exploiting or trading with their hosts, all speaking the colony's chemical language. Some of the most interesting myrmecophiles are certain butterfly caterpillars, particularly those in the family Lycanidae, the blues and coppers. These caterpillars produce a sound that mimics the signals made by ant queens, as well as chemical secretions that smell like ant larvae. The ants are fooled entirely. They carry the caterpillar into the deepest chambers of the nest, feed it, and care for it as if it were one of their own young. The caterpillar, well fed and protected, pupates inside the nest and eventually emerges as a butterfly. This deception is so precise, acoustically, chemically, behaviorally, that it represents millions of years of evolutionary refinement. The butterfly speaks the ant's language better than the ant's own young do. It is a quiet and remarkable kind of forgery. Now, gently moving forward, let us think about the fire ant's ability to form supercolonies. In parts of the southeastern United States, imported fire ants, which arrived from South America in the 20th century, have formed what are called unicolonial populations, in which individual nests cooperate rather than competing with each other. Worker ants from different nests will move freely between them without any aggression. Queen ants from different nests are tolerated. The whole population behaves as if it were a single colony spread across many acres. This is very unusual. In their native South America, fire ant colonies are highly aggressive toward each other, and the boundary between one colony and the next is clearly felt and fiercely defended. But in their introduced range, something changed. Perhaps the loss of certain parasites that had previously kept populations in check. Perhaps a genetic bottleneck caused by the small founding population. For whatever reason, the familiar boundary between colony and colony dissolved. The aggression that normally keeps colonies separate quietly disappeared, and the ants simply spread quietly and unstoppably across a landscape with no chemical fences left to stop them. Ant invasions by non-native species are one of the more significant ecological stories of our time, told slowly, quietly across decades. The Argentine ant, for example, is native to South America, but has now established populations on every continent except Antarctica. In its native range, different Argentine ant colonies compete fiercely with each other. But outside South America, in California, Southern Europe, Japan, South Africa, and Australia, individual Argentine ant colonies from different continents have been found to recognize each other as nestmates and cooperate freely. Together, they form what has been called the largest supercolony on Earth. Billions of ants, spread across multiple continents, all behaving as a single, seamless family. It began with a few ants on a ship. It has been growing slowly and steadily ever since. Slowly, gently, let us think about how ants deal with winter. In cold climates, many ant species enter a state of dormancy during the coldest months. The colony moves deeper underground, below the frost line, where the temperature stays relatively stable. The ants cluster together, moving very little, eating from stored food reserves and waiting. Their metabolic rate drops significantly. Their activity slows almost to nothing. They are not dead. They are simply waiting. Some temperate ant species can survive being completely frozen, entering a state in which their body fluids are partly replaced by compounds that prevent ice crystals from forming. When spring comes and the earth warms, they thaw and emerge, as if they had simply been paused, as if winter were just a long, deep, quiet rest. Let us take a quiet moment to think about the tropical leafcutter ant's daily commute. Leafcutter workers travel along chemical trails that can extend for hundreds of meters through the forest. The trails are kept clear of debris by dedicated worker ants whose only job is trail maintenance, moving sticks and leaves and pebbles that might obstruct the flow of traffic. The main trails of a large leafcutter colony see thousands of ants passing per hour in both directions. Going out, empty-handed workers moving toward the trees. Coming back, workers carrying pieces of leaf held aloft, each piece many times the size of the carrier's body. The columns can stretch continuously for most of the day. Watching a leafcutter trail is like watching a very slow, very quiet river. The same movement, over and over, without urgency, without end. Gently moving forward, let us consider the role of certain specialized workers called repletes, or honeypot ants. In species of the genus Myrmecocystus, found in the deserts of North America and Australia, some workers are fed nectar until their abdomens become enormously distended, swollen to the size of a small grape, glistening, almost transparent. These repletes hang from the ceilings of special chambers in the nest, their engorged bodies serving as living storage vessels. During dry seasons when food is scarce, other workers can feed from the repletes, stimulating them to regurgitate small amounts of the stored nectar. A honeypot ant replete cannot move under its own power. It can only hang and store and wait. It is a quiet and extraordinary form of self-sacrifice. a body given over entirely to the needs of the colony. Now, as we continue, let us think about how the size of an ant colony affects its intelligence. Small colonies of ants behave differently from large ones, not because the individual ants are smarter or dumber, but because the collective computation works differently at different scales. A small colony with few workers cannot maintain strong pheromone trails, cannot have specialized castes, cannot mount large foraging expeditions. A large colony can do all of these things. The colony's intelligence, its ability to make good decisions, to adapt to changing conditions, to exploit opportunities, scales with its size in a relatively predictable way. It is as if the colony's brain grows larger as more workers are added. Each ant is simply a neuron. The more neurons there are, the richer and more capable the thinking. Let us drift softly to think about ant colonies as ecosystems in themselves. A large ant nest is not just ants. It contains fungi cultivated by the ants. It contains bacteria, some living in the ant's guts, some on the walls of the nest, some in the soil of the chambers. It contains the eggs and larvae and pupae of many other insect species that share the space. It contains the midden, that quiet pile of waste and dead material that, over time, becomes one of the most biologically rich spots in the entire ecosystem, a hub of decomposition and recycling. The nest is a world within a world. A small, dark, warm, living place full of chemistry and movement, and the very slow, very quiet processes of growth and transformation. Slowly, gently, let us think about the genetic structure of ant colonies. In many ant species, the queen mates with multiple males, meaning that the workers in a colony are actually half-sisters. They share a mother, but have different fathers. This genetic diversity among workers turns out to be very important. A genetically diverse workforce is more robust. Some workers may be resistant to pathogens that kill others. Some may have behavioral tendencies that fill gaps in the colony's functioning. The queen's multiple mating, which might seem to introduce complexity, actually introduces a quiet resilience. The colony survives because it is not all the same. Its strength comes from its diversity, each slightly different worker contributing something the others cannot. Quietly, without awareness, through the soft magic of genetics. Now let us take a quiet moment to think about the fire ant's famous electrical conductivity problem. Fire ants are strongly attracted to electrical equipment and will nest inside switch boxes, air conditioning units, and electronic devices. No one is entirely sure why. One hypothesis is that the warmth generated by electrical equipment attracts them. Another is that they respond to electromagnetic fields. Whatever the cause, fire ants have caused millions of dollars of damage to electrical equipment in the southern United States. Not through any aggressive intent, but simply by existing in spaces that happen to be warm and enclosed. When one ant is electrocuted, it releases an alarm pheromone which attracts more ants. More ants arrive. More are electrocuted. More pheromone is released. The problem compounds itself, quietly and automatically, because the colony is simply following the signals. Gently moving forward, let us think about the role of ants in mythology and folklore across human cultures. Ants appear in the stories of many ancient civilizations. In Hindu mythology, the god Indra once saw an enormous procession of ants and was told that each one was a former Indra, a reminder of the endless cycling of existence. In some Native American traditions, ants are seen as patient teachers of hard work and perseverance. Ancient Greek fables, most famously attributed to Aesop, used the ant as a symbol of diligence and foresight, gathering stores for winter while others play. The ant has always been, across cultures, a symbol of quiet industry, of patience, of the dignity of small, steady effort. These stories are old, but the ants themselves are older. There is a species of ant in the Amazon basin, Azteca ants. that has a relationship with certain trees so close that the two cannot survive without each other. The Azteca ants live inside hollow stems of Cecropia trees, a fast-growing pioneer tree common in disturbed Amazonian forests. The tree provides the ants with shelter and food, specialized packets of glycogen-rich material called Müllerian bodies. The ants, in turn, aggressively defend the tree against herbivores and competing plants. They have even been observed attacking the tendrils of climbing vines that touch their tree, cutting them off before they can take hold. The relationship is so old and so complete that Cecropia trees growing without their ant partners are much more likely to be overgrown and suppressed. 2 lives, 1 quiet partnership. Now, as we continue, let us think about what scientists call stigmergy, the mechanism by which ants and other social insects coordinate complex tasks without any central control. Stigmergy means that each ant responds to changes in the environment created by previous ant actions. An ant dropping a pellet of soil creates a signal, a slightly elevated mound, that causes other ants to drop their pellets in the same place. The mound grows. The signal strengthens. More ants respond. Without any leader, without any plan, a complex structure emerges from the accumulated responses of many individuals to each other's work. This principle of intelligent-seeming structure emerging from simple local interactions is one of the most profound concepts in complexity science. It has been found not just in ants, but in termites, in neurons, in economies, in the internet, in us. Let us take a slow, gentle moment to think about the question scientists have long asked. Are ants conscious? Do they experience anything? This is a very difficult question, and we do not know the answer. The ant's nervous system is tiny. The brain of a worker ant contains only about 250,000 neurons, compared to the roughly 86 billion in a human brain. It is unlikely that an ant has anything like self-awareness or the ability to reflect on its own existence. But the question of whether it experiences something, some primitive form of sensation, some minimal form of inner life, is genuinely open. We do not have a reliable test for consciousness. We do not know where it begins or ends. We only know that the ant moves, responds, adjusts, and continues. And what that feels like from the inside, if it feels like anything at all, is a very quiet mystery. Slowly, gently, let us think about the surprising number of ants in a single square meter of healthy soil. In a rich meadow or forest, scientists have counted up to 50,000 ants per square meter of soil, though the number varies greatly by habitat and location. Even in more modest ecosystems, the density of ants is remarkable. Under every step we take outside, there is likely a complex world of tunnels and chambers and quiet, continuous movement. The ground we walk on is not solid and still. It is alive with small, unhurried creatures, rearranging it, aerating it, moving through it, carrying things up and carrying things down in the dark all the time. The earth beneath us is full of a quiet, ancient industry that we almost never see. Now, gently moving forward, let us think about the behavior of ant queens during their founding phase, that early solitary period before any workers have been born. A newly founded queen ant seals herself into a small chamber and begins to lay her first eggs. She does not forage. She does not leave. She relies entirely on the reserves stored in her body, the fat from her reabsorbed flight muscles, the energy stored in her eggs. She feeds her larvae with trophic eggs, small, unfertilized eggs produced specifically as food, not as developing ants. She might wait weeks or months in this quiet, enclosed space before her first workers emerge. She tends her larvae with her mouthparts, keeping them clean and warm, repositioning them as conditions change. She is mother and nurse and caretaker all at once, in a chamber no larger than a thimble, lit by no light at all. And she continues, without anxiety, without impatience, doing each small thing that needs to be done. She is, in this phase, entirely alone in the dark, keeping alive a fragile beginning that could easily fail. And yet she continues, quietly, steadily, without panic. The failure rate of newly founding queen ants is extraordinarily high. Most queens that land and attempt to start a colony will fail. They will be eaten or desiccate, or fail to establish enough workers before their reserves run out. Only a tiny fraction of all the queens produced in a given year will successfully establish a colony. And of the colonies that do establish, only a small fraction will survive to reproduce their own queens and males and send them out on nuptial flights. The life cycle of an ant colony, from founding to the production of new queens, can take many years. It is a long, slow, quiet arc, and most attempts at that arc fail quietly and completely, unnoticed by anything except the small piece of earth that briefly sheltered them. Now let us think softly about the way ant colonies end. Colonies do not go on forever. When the queen dies, after years or decades of life, the colony begins to decline. Without a laying queen, no new workers are born. The existing workers continue their duties for a while, but gradually their numbers dwindle. The nest slowly empties. The tunnels fall quiet. The midden stops growing. Eventually, the last worker dies and the colony is gone. It may have lasted for 20 years, may have contained millions of individuals, may have moved hundreds of tons of soil and harvested vast quantities of food. And now it is simply over. Quietly, without drama, the nest filling back in, the soil reclaiming the chambers, the landscape returning slowly to what it was before. Everything that was built, gently undone. There is no need to rush. Let us take a quiet moment to think about the deep time perspective that ants offer us. When we look at an ant colony, any ant colony, we are looking at a system that has been refined by evolution for 150 million years. Every behavior, every chemical, every body part, every social relationship has been tested and adjusted over all that time. The result is something as close to perfect as the process of evolution can achieve. Not perfect in an absolute sense. Ants can be fooled, ants can be poisoned, ants can be flooded out or parasitized. But perfect in the sense of being exquisitely fitted to a particular life. Adapted, balanced, at home in the world. There is a deep quiet in that, the quiet of something that has found its place. Gently moving forward, let us think about the way researchers study ant colonies. One technique is to cast nests in metal, filling the tunnels and chambers with molten zinc or aluminum, letting it harden, then carefully excavating the surrounding soil. What remains is a precise, three-dimensional record of the colony's architecture, every tunnel and chamber preserved in metal. These casts, when they are displayed in museums and universities, are objects of quiet beauty, branching, organic, intricate, like a sculpture grown from the inside out. Looking at them, you can see the logic of the colony's structure. The chambers arranged at specific depths, connected by efficient pathways, the whole thing oriented with extraordinary care. A building designed by no architect, built by creatures with no blueprints. And yet, looking at the cast, you can feel its intelligence. Some ant species build structures that extend above the ground. Not just mounds, but elaborate, multi-chambered superstructures. The wood ant colonies of Europe build large mound nests from pine needles, twigs, and soil, which can be several feet high and house millions of workers. These mounds are carefully managed. Workers regularly turn the outer layer of pine needles to expose them to the sun and warm the nest, then rearrange them to insulate against cold nights. The mound acts as a solar collector, maintaining the interior at a temperature several degrees warmer than the surrounding air. Workers can be seen streaming up and down the mound's exterior throughout the day, maintaining its temperature regulation with the same quiet, unhurried attention they give to everything else. A living, breathing building. Slowly, gently, let us think about the role of ants in science and medicine. Ant venom, ant silk, ant antimicrobial compounds, and ant-derived antibiotics are all areas of active research. The fungus farming ants have been studied for decades as a model of sustainable agriculture. Ant colony optimization algorithms are used widely in computer science. The study of ant collective intelligence has informed our understanding of distributed systems, from traffic flow to internet routing. Ants have been launched into space aboard NASA missions, where researchers studied how the microgravity of orbit affected their foraging behavior. The answer: they adapted fairly quickly and found ways to navigate even without the gravitational reference they normally rely on. These small, ancient creatures continue to teach us things about the world and about ourselves. Now, as we continue, let us think about a very specific and quietly wonderful thing that ants do. They bury their dead. Many ant species actively remove dead workers from the nest and deposit them in the midden, the refuse pile, or in specific chambers designated for deceased colony members. Some species create separate burial grounds. Others, in certain circumstances, will construct small chambers around a dead nestmate within the nest itself. The response to death in ant colonies is prompt and organized. A dead ant is never left in place for long. The colony attends to death with the same quiet efficiency it brings to everything else. Not with ceremony, not with grief, but with care, and with the quiet understanding that the life of the colony must continue. Let us take a soft moment to think about the sense of smell that ants possess. An ant's ability to detect and discriminate between different chemical compounds is extraordinarily refined. Studies have shown that some ant species can detect and respond to specific pheromones at concentrations as low as a few molecules per cubic centimeter of air. To put this in perspective, if you dissolved a small amount of a pheromone in the water of an average swimming pool, the concentration of that pheromone in the air above the pool might still be detectable to an ant. This sensitivity allows the ant to follow fading trails across great distances, to recognize nestmates after long periods of separation, and to detect the presence of a fungal pathogen on a nestmate's body before it becomes apparent in any other way. The world for an ant is a rich and detailed landscape of scent. Gently moving forward, let us consider the relationship between ants and the Amazon rainforest more broadly. Ants in the Amazon are so numerous and so ecologically significant that some researchers have described the forest as being, in some sense, managed by ants. They aerate the soil, disperse seeds, control populations of herbivorous insects, transport nutrients, and create microhabitats for other species. The forest depends on them in ways that are still being mapped. And the ants, in turn, depend on the forest, on its diversity, its moisture, its complexity. When sections of the Amazon are cleared, the ant communities change dramatically. The intricate web of relationships that ants maintain, those millions of quiet partnerships and quiet competitions, frays and simplifies. Something ancient and complex becomes something sparse and simple. The forest is quieter, but not in a peaceful way. Now let us think about the concept of ergonomics in ant labor. Scientists who study ant foraging have found that ant trails tend to be laid at angles that minimize the total energy cost of transportation. If you think about a network of trails connecting a nest to multiple food sources, the most energetically efficient network is not one where each food source has a direct trail. It is one where trails share common pathways as much as possible, branching only when necessary. Ant trail networks, studied mathematically, have been found to closely approximate these theoretical optima. Not because any ant planned the network, but because trail reinforcement naturally produces efficient geometries over time. Well-used paths become stronger. Inefficient paths fade. The network optimizes itself, slowly, quietly through use. Slowly, gently, let us think about ant silk. And yes, some ants do produce silk, though not all species. Weaver ants, as we mentioned earlier, use larval silk to bind leaves together. But some adult ants also produce silk from glands near their mouths, a substance used to coat the inside surfaces of the nest, creating smooth, clean walls that resist moisture and microbial growth. The composition of this silk is subtly different from that of spiders and silkworms, and scientists are studying it for its potential properties as a very fine, very strong antimicrobial material. Ants have been making silk for tens of millions of years. Far longer than silkworms have been cultivated by humans, and likely longer than modern spiders have existed in their current form. The silk glands of ants are thought to be ancient structures, evolved originally for a different purpose and gradually repurposed over millions of years into building tools. And the result is a material exquisitely suited to the ant's needs. Thin, strong, flexible, and naturally resistant to the microbes that would otherwise thrive in the warm, humid interior of the nest. Small, quiet, functional, perfect. Let us drift softly to thinking about the concept of quorum sensing in ants, a process by which the colony makes decisions based on the number of individuals that agree. When a colony of rock ants needs to find a new nest site, perhaps their old one has been damaged, scouts go out and explore possible locations. Each scout evaluates potential sites and returns to recruit other scouts to the best ones. Sites that are truly good attract many scouts quickly. Sites that are merely adequate attract fewer. When the number of scouts at a particular site crosses a threshold, a quorum, the colony decides that site has been chosen and all workers begin moving there. No single ant decided. The decision emerged from the accumulating weight of many individual assessments. It is quiet, collective, and remarkably reliable. Gently moving forward, let us think about the extraordinary longevity of ant species in the fossil record. Because ants have been preserved in amber, we have a remarkably detailed picture of what ancient ants looked like and how they lived. Amber from Burma, dating to approximately 100 million years ago, contains ant specimens in beautiful detail, their legs, antennae, and mouth parts preserved with stunning clarity. In some pieces of amber, we can see ants in the act of interacting with each other, or carrying objects, or attending to other insects. These frozen moments, preserved for tens of millions of years, tell us that ant social behavior was already complex and organized very early in ant evolution. These ancient ants were already doing everything that modern ants do. Quiet, organized, steadily working. There is no need to rush. Let us take a quiet moment to consider the role of light in the life of an ant colony. Most of the work ants do is done in darkness. Underground in the nest, in the deep shade of the forest floor, in the enclosed spaces beneath rocks and logs. Light, for most ants, is not a primary organizing feature of their world the way it is for us. Yet ants are not indifferent to light. The position of the sun is used for navigation by many foraging species. Some ants are attracted to light, others avoid it strongly. Many ants show very precise timing in their daily activities, going out at certain hours, returning at others, timed to the light cycle of the day. Ant life follows the sun, even when the ants themselves remain largely in the dark. Now let us think softly about the concept of ant memory. Worker ants do not have very long memory lives, most die within weeks. But the colony itself has a kind of memory that persists much longer. Trail networks, once established, remain in place and can be reactivated quickly after disruption. Nest architecture reflects the choices of previous workers. The chemical environment of the nest carries information about its history, which species have visited, which pathogens have been present, which resources have been exploited. Some researchers describe the colony as having a distributed memory, stored not in any individual brain, but in the physical structures and chemical residues of the nest itself. The colony remembers things that no individual ant alive has experienced. It is a form of memory that is quiet, impersonal, and very durable. Slowly, gently, let us think about the strange world of socially parasitic ants. Species that have given up the ability to found their own colonies and instead take over colonies of other species. The queen of a socially parasitic ant, when she matures, does not try to start her own colony. Instead, she enters the nest of a host species, often related to her own, and somehow displaces or kills the host queen. She then begins laying her own eggs, which are raised by the host workers. Over time, as the host workers age and die, they are replaced by the parasitic queen's own workers. The colony is gradually taken over, quietly and completely. The host colony continues to function as before, but it is now serving a different queen. A transition that was never announced. A change that happened in the dark. Let us take a quiet moment to think about leafcutter ant refuse piles. The middens where spent fungal substrate, dead ants, and other waste are deposited. These middens are not just waste piles. They are ecosystems in their own right. The organic richness of the midden supports an extraordinary diversity of microbes, fungi, insects, and other invertebrates. Some species live only in leafcutter ant middens and nowhere else. The waste of the colony becomes the resource of another community. Nothing is wasted at a larger scale. Every process generates something that something else can use. The midden decomposes slowly, enriching the soil, returning nutrients to the forest. The colony's waste becomes the forest's gift. A quiet, circular gift. Gently moving forward, let us think about the role of ants in seed dispersal at the level of an ecosystem. In North American deciduous forests, ants are responsible for dispersing the seeds of a significant percentage of wildflower species. Trilliums, bloodroot, wild ginger, hepatica. Many of the most beautiful spring wildflowers of the eastern forest rely on ants to carry their seeds away from the parent plant and bury them at just the right depth. Without ants, the distribution of these plants across the forest floor would be very different. The pattern of spring wildflowers in a temperate forest, that soft, beautiful carpet of color in early spring, is in part a map of ant activity from seasons past. The forest's beauty, shaped by small, quiet creatures that never see it. Now, as we continue, let us think about ants in extreme environments. We have talked about desert ants surviving extreme heat. Some ants live in caves where there is no light at all and have lost their eyes over evolutionary time, becoming small, pale, simple creatures adapted entirely to a lightless world. Some ant species live in mangroves, building nests in roots exposed to salt water, and surviving regular flooding by sealing their nests or simply enduring submersion. Some ants live in the canopy of tropical forests, never or rarely descending to the ground. Wherever there is a stable energy source and some space, some kind of ant has found a way to be there. The ant's adaptability is quiet and astonishing. Every niche filled, every gap occupied. Somewhere very softly, an ant. Slowly, gently, let us think about the total ecological impact of ants. Scientists have tried to calculate this, and the numbers are quietly staggering. In a typical hectare of Amazonian rainforest, ants make up roughly 30% of the total animal biomass, more than all the vertebrates combined. They turn over and relocate more soil per year than earthworms in many ecosystems. They are responsible for the dispersal of seeds of thousands of plant species. They control the populations of herbivorous insects, preventing population explosions that would damage plants. They contribute to the nutrient cycling that maintains soil fertility. Remove ants from an ecosystem, and it changes rapidly and profoundly. Add ants back, and it slowly recovers. The ant is not just a participant in the ecosystem. In many environments, it is its quiet foundation. We have reached 100 facts together, And perhaps by now the world feels a little softer, a little quieter, a little more like the still and steady underground world of the ant. Let us take a gentle breath together and continue. Now let us think about a very interesting and somewhat mysterious behavior called tandem running. In some ant species, when a scout ant finds a good new nest site, it does not simply lay a trail and recruit followers. Instead, it finds another worker, positions itself in front of it, and walks slowly toward the new site, pausing regularly to wait while the follower catches up, taps it with its antennae, and signals readiness to continue. This is called tandem running, and it is one of the most personalized forms of information transfer known in ants. The leader transmits not just a chemical message, but a full journey, showing the follower the route, step by step. The follower learns the path experientially. When it knows the way, it can lead others. Knowledge spreads slowly, gently, one ant at a time. Gently moving forward, let us think about the concept of collective decision-making under uncertainty. When rock ants face a choice between two nest sites of different quality, their collective decision-making process has been studied in remarkable detail. Individual scouts assess both sites independently and recruit others. If the sites are very different in quality, the colony decides quickly and accurately. But if the sites are similar in quality, the decision takes longer. This mirrors what we know about good decision-making in complex systems, including in human brains and human groups. Fast decisions when the right answer is obvious. Slow, careful deliberation when the choice is genuinely difficult. The ant colony, with no language and no consciousness, implements the same logic that we work hard to achieve in our own collective decision-making. It is a quiet parallel that feels, in some way, like a recognition. Now let us think softly about how the sound landscape of an ant colony contributes to its functioning. We have talked about stridulation, the vibrations ants make by rubbing parts of their body together. In carpenter ants, stridulation is used to communicate alarm through the solid wood of the nest. In leafcutter ants, stridulation actually helps cut leaves. The vibrations produced by the cutting ant's jaw help break through tough leaf tissues more efficiently. In some ant species, the queen's stridulation acts as a signal that suppresses egg-laying by workers. Her vibrations maintain her reproductive dominance. And in some species, the stridulations of developing pupae, those quiet, transforming forms, signal to workers that they need more care and feeding. Even in stillness, even in transformation, there is communication. Let us take a quiet moment to think about the fact that some ant species can live above ground in hollow plant stems, in the canopy of tropical forests, without ever touching the soil. These arboreal ants have adapted everything about their lifestyle to life in the treetops. They collect nectar from flowers. They tend aphids and scale insects that feed on the plants. They build carton nests, structures made of chewed plant material and silk, attached to branches and stems. Some species travel between trees along aerial bridges of sticky silk. For these ants, the ground is the sky, a distant place they may never visit. Their whole world is leaves and stems and flowers and the small, slow spaces between. A complete life, lived entirely above us, quietly in the green. Slowly, gently, let us think about how ants have evolved to specialize in prey that other predators find impossible to capture. Army ants pursue and overwhelm virtually any prey they encounter through sheer numbers. But other ant species have developed subtler specializations. The Dracula ant of Madagascar hunts small soil arthropods using a technique called subcutaneous feeding. The queen and workers actually drink the body fluids of their own larvae without killing them. Daciton armigerum, a large Amazonian predator ant, has snap-trap mandibles that close faster than almost any other biological structure, creating enough force to launch the ant backward if the mandibles snap on empty air. Myrmecia, the bulldog ant of Australia, can leap significant distances when alarmed. Every ant has found its own quiet, specialized way of being alive. Now, as we continue, let us think about ants and their relationship with the rain. Some tropical ant species have been found to position the entrances to their nests to collect rainwater, channeling it into underground cisterns. In times of drought, this stored water helps maintain the humidity the colony needs. Some ants collect dew from plant surfaces in the early morning. Others have evolved behaviors to minimize water loss from their own bodies during dry periods, clustering together, reducing activity, sealing the nest. The management of water is as critical to the colony as the management of food, and ants have evolved as many solutions to the water problem as they have to the food problem. Clever, quiet, patient solutions developed over millions of years. Gently moving forward, let us think about the way research on ants has influenced our understanding of genetics and evolution. The social structure of ant colonies, with many workers giving up reproduction to support a queen, was long seen as a challenge to the theory of natural selection. Why would a worker give up its own chance to reproduce? The answer came from a simple insight about genetics. In Hymenoptera, the group that includes ants, bees, and wasps, the genetics of sex determination are unusual, so that full sisters are more closely related to each other than mothers are to daughters. A worker ant is more genetically similar to its full sisters than it would be to its own offspring. By helping its mother raise more sisters, the worker is actually propagating more of its own genes than it would by reproducing independently. The ant's altruism, looked at gently through the lens of genetics, becomes a form of quiet self-interest. Let us take a soft moment to think about the fact that the theory used to explain ant altruism, called inclusive fitness or kin selection, was developed in large part through thinking about ants and their social structure. The biologist William Hamilton worked out the mathematics of how genes can spread through a population even when the individuals carrying those genes do not reproduce, as long as they help closely related individuals who share those genes. This idea, often summarized as the gene's eye view of evolution, was one of the most important developments in evolutionary biology of the 20th century. And it began in part with someone sitting quietly and thinking carefully about ants, about why these small creatures work so tirelessly for others, about what quiet logic underpins their endless, unasking service. Now let us think softly about the fact that ants are model organisms in neuroscience. Despite having tiny brains, ants exhibit sophisticated learning and memory. Workers can be trained to associate specific odors with food rewards. They remember routes between the nest and food sources after just a few trips. They can distinguish between nestmates and strangers after periods of separation. Some species remember the positions of landmarks relative to the sun for many days. And all of this learning takes place in a brain containing only a few 100,000 neurons, a fraction of the complexity of even the simplest vertebrate brain. What ants achieve cognitively with so little brain tissue helps scientists understand which neural operations are fundamental to learning and memory, and which require greater complexity. Slowly, gently, let us think about the relationship between ants and temperature. Ants are poikilothermic. Their body temperature matches the temperature of their environment. When they are cold, they slow down. When they are warm, they move faster. A winter ant colony underground is a quiet, slow, nearly still thing. Heartbeats slow, metabolism low, movement minimal. A summer colony at its peak is rapid and efficient, activity humming at full capacity. The temperature of the colony is the colony's metabolism. This is why the mound nests of temperate forest ants, those large piles of pine needles, are so important. They allow the colony to keep its interior warmer than the surrounding environment, extending the season of productivity. They are, in a quiet way, the colony's investment in its own future. Now, as we continue, let us take a quiet moment to think about what happens to an ant colony during a drought. As water becomes scarce, foraging is reduced. The colony draws on stored food reserves. Activity inside the nest is minimized to reduce metabolic water loss. The queen reduces egg production. Workers cluster together to conserve moisture. Some species seal their nest entrances more tightly. Others move to greater depths, where moisture is more stable. Everything slows down. The colony enters a kind of gentle austerity, using less, needing less, waiting. When rain finally comes, foraging resumes within hours. Egg production restarts. The colony rebuilds its stores. It is a system exquisitely calibrated to cycles of abundance and scarcity, resilient because it can shrink as well as grow. Gently moving forward, let us think about the beautiful and mathematically elegant patterns made by foraging ant trails when viewed from above. The trails of a large colony, spreading out from the nest entrance and branching toward different food sources, look like the branches of a river system or the veins of a leaf. Networks that maximize surface area while minimizing total length. Mathematicians call these structures Steiner trees, and they represent a theoretical optimum for connecting many points with a minimum of total pathway length. Ant trails do not always achieve this optimum perfectly, but they come remarkably close, the result of pheromone reinforcement acting over time, gradually pruning inefficient paths and strengthening efficient ones. A simple process producing a beautiful, near-optimal structure, quietly, without intention. Now let us think about the interesting and somewhat puzzling behavior called social fever in ant colonies. Some ant species, when infected with a pathogen, have been observed to raise the temperature of parts of their nest by clustering in those areas and generating body heat through metabolic activity. This collective fever, a behavioral analog to the fever response in individual animals, may help kill pathogens that are sensitive to temperature. The colony, as a superorganism, produces a fever the way an individual organism does. No ant decides to do this. The behavior emerges from each infected ant's tendency to cluster with others in a warm spot, and the collective result is a slightly elevated temperature in the affected area. A distributed immune response, running softly and automatically. Slowly, gently, let us think about the colony's response to a lost queen. When a queen ant dies in a colony of certain species, something quiet and remarkable happens. Some workers, previously completely suppressed by the queen's chemical signals, begin to develop their ovaries. In queenless colonies, workers can lay unfertilized eggs that develop into male ants. The colony, responding to the absence of the chemical signals that suppressed reproduction, tries to continue its lineage through these reproductive workers. This transition is not always smooth. Competing workers may conflict over who gets to lay eggs. But the impulse is clear. The colony moves toward whatever path remains open to it. It adapts. It continues. Quietly, the will to continue persists long after the center is gone. Let us take a quiet moment to think about ants and their role in the nitrogen cycle. Nitrogen is one of the most important nutrients for life, and ants play a surprising role in moving it through ecosystems. When ants collect protein-rich food, insects, seeds, and bring it underground, they deposit the nitrogen contained in that food into the soil of the nest. Their waste and their dead bodies add to this deposition. Over time, ant nests become concentrations of nitrogen-rich soil, significantly more fertile than the surrounding earth. Plants growing near ant nests often grow faster and healthier than those farther away. When nests are abandoned and collapse, that stored fertility slowly disperses, enriching a larger area of soil. The ant's work, unseen underground, quietly maintains the chemical foundation of the living world above. Now, as we continue, let us think about the way ants deal with the darkness of their underground world. Navigating in tunnels with no light requires a different set of sensory tools than navigating in the open air. Ants in the nest rely primarily on touch, vibration, and smell. They run their antennae constantly along the walls and floor of the tunnels, building a tactile map of the nest's architecture. They follow chemical trails. They respond to the vibrations of other ants. The complete darkness of the deep nest is not a problem for them. It is simply their normal world. For a creature that navigates primarily by chemistry, darkness is not darkness at all. It is just a condition in which one set of senses dominates. The ant moves through its dark world as comfortably and efficiently as we move through a well-lit room. Gently moving forward, let us think about ant colonies and what we might call culture, the transmission of learned behaviors between individuals. Ants do not have culture in the human sense, but they do transmit information between individuals, and the information carried by scouts shapes the behavior of the whole colony. If a particularly effective food source is discovered and used repeatedly, the trail to it becomes well-established and robust, a kind of collective memory encoded in pheromone. The behavior of the colony reflects its history of successes and failures. In a modest, quiet way, each colony has its own accumulated experience, not stored in any individual mind, but in the network of trails and chemical gradients and nest structures that are the physical record of what the colony has learned. Now let us think softly about time in the ant colony. Not the time of individual ants, but the deep time of the colony itself. A large, mature colony may be a decade old. Its queen may have been laying eggs for 15 years. The nest may have been gradually expanded and modified by successive generations of workers who never knew each other, each one adding a small piece to a structure that began before they were born and will continue after they die. The colony has a continuity that transcends any individual, a slow, quiet persistence that is not quite individual life and not quite anything else. Something in between, a living system that is always changing and always somehow the same. There is a deep comfort in that kind of continuity, a quiet, enduring sameness. Slowly, gently, let us take a quiet moment to think about what the study of ants has taught us about ourselves. The study of social insects, ants, bees, wasps, and termites, has shaped our understanding of cooperation, of altruism, of the relationship between the individual and the collective. It has given us mathematical tools for understanding networks and optimization. It has given us models for distributed computing and robotics. It has challenged and refined our theories of natural selection and the evolution of social behavior. In many ways, the study of ants has been a quiet mirror, a way of seeing, from a great and illuminating distance, something about the deep logic of social life. The same forces that shaped ant colonies have, in very different ways, shaped us. Now let us think about the future of ants. As the climate changes, ant communities are changing too. Some species are expanding their ranges as temperatures rise. Others are being squeezed out of habitats they have occupied for millions of years. Invasive species, like the Argentine ant and the fire ant, continue to spread through global trade and travel, disrupting native ant communities in new regions. Scientists are watching these changes carefully because changes in ant communities signal deeper changes in ecosystems. The ants are, in a quiet way, indicators, small, sensitive, ancient, of the health of the living world. Where ants thrive in their diversity, ecosystems tend to be rich and complex. Where they simplify, something larger is changing. The ants are trying to tell us something. They have always been trying to tell us something. And now we arrive at our last fact, our 120th quiet truth about the world of ants. Ants do not stop working because they do not need to. Work for an ant is not a burden. It is not something imposed from outside. It is simply what an ant is. When a worker ant carries a crumb, it is not tired. It is not sacrificing. It is being fully and completely itself, doing exactly what its body, its instincts, and its chemistry have shaped it to do over 150 million years of becoming. There is no separation in the ant's world between living and working. The work is the life. The life is the work. Each tunnel dug is a kind of breathing. Each seed carried is a kind of singing. And the colony, that quiet, immense, ancient thing, hums along in the dark beneath our feet, season after season, century after century, doing what it has always done. Quietly, steadily, without end. And so, we have come to the end of our long, quiet journey together. We have moved through the ancient world of ants, through their tunnels and their trails, their queens and their workers, their fungi gardens and their seed dispersal, their strange partnerships with butterflies and aphids and trees, their sleeping and their chemical conversations, their collective decisions, and their distributed memories. It is a world that has been going on, all around us and beneath our feet, for longer than we can truly imagine. A world that is small and quiet and full of an intelligence that does not know it is intelligent. A world that simply continues. And perhaps now you feel a little like a colony at rest. Everything settling slowly. The outer world growing quiet. The work of the day set gently aside, like a leaf placed softly on the ground. You have been here, and that is enough. The tunnels are warm and dark and still. The queen is quietly resting in her deep chamber. The workers have returned from their foraging. The eggs are safe. The larvae are tended. The colony is at peace. And you too can be at peace. You can let your thoughts slow and soften and drift apart, like pheromones fading in still air. There is no need to hold on to anything tonight. There is nothing that needs to be carried or sorted or solved. Just this. Just the gentle dark. Just the soft, slow rhythm of your breathing. Thank you for being here tonight. It was a quiet pleasure to wander through this small and ancient world with you. If this helped you find some rest, and if you would like to return to places like this one, you are very welcome to like this video and to subscribe so that we can meet again in other quiet places, exploring other gentle corners of the world. Good night. Sleep well.